Hello, today I'm going to talk to you about single deals to make you millions of pounds. Very often people ask me, Paul, well, how do you get into property? So what I want to talk about today is I want to give some really good insight into single deals to make you millions of pounds for people that are already in property and they want to take that next step. And I think this should be interesting for everybody because whether you're in property or not at the moment, I'm sure you want to know what happens next. After you've done your first 5, 10, 15 deals, many people don't carry on doing the relatively small 50, £100,000 deals all the time. Many people will go up a level. So let me tell you first about a 60,000 square foot warehouse that I took on in Hillington, which is just outside Glasgow, around about 10 years ago now. Now you might be thinking, how big is 60,000 square feet? Well, I don't know if this helps, but an acre is 80,000 square feet. So it's kind of 3/4 of an acre of building. So that's a relatively large building by some standards. Hopefully when you get far enough on in your journey, you'll think, oh, that's quite a small one. So it's a 60,000 square foot building. What was it used for? Well, it was a failing business. It was a business that was breaking even. So what did I do? I got involved with that business. And as soon as you start talking about buying a commercial property, as soon as you start talking about buying a business, it's not about the bricks and mortar. It suddenly becomes about the value of the books. So you need to move on from just bricks and mortar valuation on buy-to-lets, and you need to start to learn about balance sheets and profit and loss accounts, because that is the basis on which a business is valued. Now, this particular business wasn't making any money. It had turnover, but it wasn't making a profit. Now, I could see how it could make a profit, but it wasn't. It was an old business, and to explain a little bit more detail about it, it used to be called Bottle Recovery Scotland. And the basis of the business was, do you remember there used to be like returnable beer bottles and returnable soft drink bottles? So this business would drive around the pubs and clubs of Glasgow, collect up all the empty bottles, clean them, and then sell them back to the bottlers that would refill them. And that was a great business for many years, and it still had the bottle washers. But over the years, as it became less normal to have a refillable bottle, because what do we have these days? Too much plastic and cans and all that sort of thing. So the old glass refillable bottles are just not used anymore. But I could see that a warehouse that size, where it was in the middle of the industrial heartland, and more specifically the spirits bottling industry of Glasgow, could have a great future servicing the drinks industry, but just in a different way. It still had the contacts with all the businesses, because in a small way it was still working with them. So how could you take that business relationship and grow it? And one of the things that I knew was there was a shortage of contract bottling in that area. So that means, I don't know if you know this, but if we pick spirits, for instance, and I'm sure you'll know that an awful lot of whiskey and vodka and products like that are bottled in Glasgow, and specifically in that area of Glasgow. I don't know if you know this, the average person consumes 2 bottles of spirits a year. One of those is at Christmas. So you've got 50% of your demand in like 8 weeks of the year, because people tend to get their stuff, get their drinks in before Christmas. And that means that the demand for bottling isn't like that all year. It goes massive spike and then it falls away again. So in the busy times, the big bottling plants want little bottlers to help them out with special runs of this, or at Christmas you'll get like a bottle in a tin or something, or it'll be in a cardboard box and it'll have a couple of glasses with it, that sort of thing. And that in the industry is called contract packing or repacking. Now you need specific niche industry knowledge to be able to do deals like this, but almost always there's an opportunity to leverage the property. So how did I leverage that property? Well, in order to purchase the business, I got a regional selective assistance grant. So that's not cheap money, that's free money. So I got an RSA grant, Regional Selective Assistance Grant, Now you need to know what you're doing here, but I got an RSA grant that cost me nothing of £415,000. I was then able to go to, at the time, the Royal Bank of Scotland, but any bank would have done it. They could see that I had the grant of £415,000, so they then gave me matched grant funding for another £415,000. I then went to Renfrewshire Council and got another £35,000. So one way or another, I had over £900,000 of grant money or really cheap money from the banks. And that is what I used to buy the business with the building. We then ran that business. I didn't. I put in a manager, a guy called Andrew, and Andrew ran that business for me for 3 years. 3 years later, it was profitable. And when a business is profitable, you can sell it for a multiple of its profit. Typically, for a business like that, it's between 2 and 3 times. That business was making around about £1 million a year, so it was sold for 2 to 3 times. So would you like to go and buy a business like that that's got a whacking great warehouse and bottling facility by the time we finish with it, that makes £1 million a year, sell it for £2.5 million, but it has not actually cost you 1 penny. Neither have you had to spend any of your time doing it after doing your analysis, because you've put a manager in there to do the business for you. Now, I appreciate this isn't your first property deal. Now, why do I feel drawn to talk to you about this now? Because this is the elite level of property deal. This is the Formula One level of property deal. And I'm out here in Italy, near Monza, and I'm actually going off this week. It's a Saturday morning. I'm going off this weekend to spend 2 days in the Paddock Club, hanging out with the people at the top of their game. I'm an engineer. There is no other sport for me that comes close to Formula One in terms of the amount of money that gets spent on it, the technical excellence, the human excellence in terms of what those drivers do. So for me, it's the absolute pinnacle of man and machine working together in perfect harmony. They have to have systems, they have to have big teams, and it isn't the first thing you're going to do. Because many people that get into Formula One will have started off by racing go-karts. The little thing, the cheap thing, the few £100 thing. So if you want to end up doing big multi-million pound deals like I've done, you're going to need to start somewhere. And that somewhere is very often your first £50,000 or £60,000 buy-to-let. But many people don't do it because they want that first £50,000 or £60,000 buy-to-let. Lewis Hamilton didn't get into kart racing because he wanted to be a kart racer. He always wanted to be a Formula One racer, and specifically, he always wanted to be a world champion, which is what he now is 5 times over, and hopefully this year 6 times. So I want to give you a couple more examples of how you can take relatively small amounts of money, because this is the thing. The bigger the deal that you do, you don't actually often need more money. What you need is more contacts. You've heard this before, I'm sure. Your network is your net worth. What you need is more knowledge. What you need is more support. What you need is more mentoring. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people that want to do these big deals. So if you're looking to do big deals, you need to get yourself involved with people that have got a knowledge of doing that, and they've done it before. And I want to give you some insight into some of the biggest corporate deals that I've done. The biggest corporate acquisition that I've done, the biggest brand acquisition that I've done, is I bought Malibu from Diageo. Now that was an £850 million transaction. The biggest disposal I've done, I was part of the team that sold Allied Domecq to a consortium of companies that bought it, and that transaction was almost 18 billion. So I've got the knowledge, I've got the insight at the very top level of the game. And I'm delighted to share that information and that knowledge with everyone that's watching this video. So now I want to give you a medium-sized deal to give you a feel for the kind of deal that you can do with some money, not no money. And then I want to finish up with one that I'm looking at right now. And you'll appreciate I can't really give you the full details of the one that I'm looking at right now because I'm in the middle of buying it. Happily tell you about it afterwards. So I now want to tell you about a 4-acre site. See how I'm moving from square feet or square meters to acres and hectares? Because as you do bigger deals, they physically get bigger. often. So this one was getting disposed by a pension fund. It was 4-acre site, and on it, it had over 100,000 square feet of buildings. It was light industrial. It was warehouses, it was workshops. Let me give you a feel for the kind of property it was. I'm sure there'll be ones near you. There was quite a lot of parking. It was kind of an industrial site that was past its heyday. The anchor tenant was Howdens, you know, the kitchen people, kitchens and bathrooms. So they had about 30,000 square feet, which is kind of one corner, if you can imagine it, of the building. But then the rest of the building was little units. There was a guy doing MOTs. There were 2 guys that were doing alloy wheel refurbishment, you know, so all little bits and pieces. And there was a couple of burger vans. So I'm sure you can visualize the kind of property that it was. Now the sale price for this property was just £400,000. That's a lot of property, that's a lot of real estate for £400,000. Now, why did the pension fund want to get rid of it? It was too small. A little itty bitty thing. Because pension funds will very often not touch anything that isn't in the millions. And they bought this portfolio and then they were getting rid of the little bits and pieces. So they wanted to keep the big multi-million pound things, because that's what pension funds like, but they wanted to get rid of the smaller things. So many of you will see houses. Many have probably got houses that are worth more than £400,000. So this was an entire, almost an industrial estate for £400,000. What was the income from this complex of industrial estate? Well, it wasn't fully let. This was the other scary thing. But even though it wasn't fully let, it was about 75–80% let, so there were a few vacant units. It was still bringing in £125,000 a year. So imagine that. £400,000 to buy it and bringing in more than £10,000 a month. So what was the additional complexity? What was the additional difficulty in this case? Well, the tenants, apart from Howdens, weren't on proper leases. So you needed to go in there and you needed to sort out the tenancy agreements. So they were on things called licenses to occupy. Now I know I'm getting a little bit technical, and that's not really the point of this video. The point of this video is to show you a pathway where you can go from deals that maybe give you a few £100s a month to a few £1,000s a month to, in this case, £10,000 a month. And you can do this with the right knowledge, support and education. But we are now moving towards the elite level, the Formula One level of property. So the final deal that I want to share with you today is a deal that I'm looking at, and this is an office complex. It's got 5 office blocks, 5 individual office blocks, all of which are quite big. So one of which is let to the BBC. You know, so they've got 4 of them that are let to big institutions like the BBC. The purchase price, or the advertised price, is 3.2 million. So, you know, we're going up the grades here, we're going up the pay scales here. Now, how much money do you think you would need to do that deal? Well, you can't possibly tell me, because I've given you nowhere near enough information about the deal. The income from it is more than £400,000 a year. The challenge, because there's always a challenge, which is an opportunity, the challenge is that the 5th office block, you've got 4 that are let out to good, strong covenants, to good tenants. The 5th one is a bit of a mishmash. So you've got a constituency MP's office in there. You've got all sorts of little bits and pieces. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a tenancy agreement out to a constituency MP, but it says this. It says a 5-year term or a general election, and who knows when the next general election is going to be, or the death of the MP. Because if the MP dies, obviously he doesn't want the office anymore. If there's a general election, he or she might lose their seat. So there's a complexity in this deal is sorting out those tenancy agreements. But if you sort them out, and you can with the right help, you can move that £400,000 a year closer to £450,000. Now, if you've got £450,000 a year coming in off a good set of good covenants, long leases, the value of that property is going to be between £4.5 and £5 million by the time that I've finished with it. So if I can get it for anything like 3, but I make it worth 5, well, that's a £2 million deal. So if you like the idea of creating chunks of millions of pounds by doing single deals, you need to look up a bit. You need to look at bigger deals, and you need to consider that elite Formula One level. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been my pleasure recording it, as always. You've been wonderful, I've been Paul, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye for now. Watch out for next week's edition. If you've liked it, please literally like it. Subscribe to the channel, get your friends to do the same. You've been wonderful, I've been Paul. See you next time. Bye-bye.